Good morning. I'm glad to be here and super glad to be part of this tribe that has been meeting periodically, the Misinformation Tribe, of folks who are trying to do stuff about it. It's a wonderful group, and I see a big green button. I assume that means go forward. I'm here to talk about something that's come up a few times, and that's the demand side. We spent a lot of time in this world thinking about better supply. God knows we need better supply of information, of journalism, et cetera, but I'm quite sure we need to improve demand equally. It's what I've been working on for a while now. To summarize the last couple of days, this stuff is not new. That slide's out of, it's not showing right, but we have a disinformation, surveillance, industrial complex that has risen, that is really new, and that it's going to get a lot worse. These are not showing in full, whatever. This is going to get worse. You heard about deep fakes, and it's a real thing, and we're in some trouble, but I think we're going to see our way through it. We can't just upgrade supply. We got to upgrade us, and that's all of us. And I want to say that I love calling bullshit, by the way, and I think that we should remember, as you just heard, we all get fooled too. At least once a year, I share something that turns out to have been wrong. And I'm more careful than I used to be by far, but it still happens. No matter how much time we spend in this, we're all susceptible to the problem. And that media, news literacy, these are terms that are debatable, news awareness, news fluency, some of the words people are using, but we have to work on that. And there are lots of definitions, one's subsets of others, et cetera, but we do need to focus on it. The work that we're doing, and I've been doing, I teach a course in this and have for a while and did a MOOC on it, offering ideas, principles for consumers. These are pretty obvious ones, and that the creators who are now consumers and everyone doing both, we need to focus on lots of new principles. In people who want to be taken seriously, I think need to add transparency as a principle that has not been particularly a journalistic one, and hopefully will be. Now, who's going to be responsible for doing this? State legislatures are starting to wake up to this. There's not enough of them doing it, but there's certainly no impetus at the federal government to teach critical thinking, which is at the heart of this. How are we going to make this stuff scale? That's the question I keep asking. We got to do it, and we got to do it at scale. There are a number of ways. One is to get into education, libraries in a more comprehensive way. At the moment, these are one-offs for the most part. They're good one-offs. We want to do more of them, but we need a lot more focus on it, and we can do a great deal more. Sorry about these slides. News organizations, media organizations are a place we can get scale. For reasons that completely baffle me, journalists did not make this part of their mission 50 years ago. I think if they had, we'd be in a little bit less trouble than we are today. Back when they had more reach, back when they had more money, back when they had more reason to do it, they didn't. We're working on some things to help them do it because there's still some scale in journalism. And the technology industry is core to figuring this out because they define scale at this point. And there are some promising things happening, not nearly enough, but I think we have some potential there. All of these parties have to be part of something that's collaborative, and we hope that that's going to happen, and it's kind of what we're working on it's very new, this News Collab at ASU, to try and focus largely from the demand side on how we can, with partners, elevate the best stuff going on in this, do experiments with various partners and others, and see what we can make happen. And some things are starting to work. One of the things we did early on was to go relentlessly looking for stuff where there was evidence, A, that it was interesting, B, that it worked, that there was some information, some data, some evidence that something good happened as a result. There are a million good experiments going on around the world in these areas of transparency, engagement, education, and et cetera. But what are the ones that work? So we compiled best practices, and again, we think of it as kind of a cookbook of things that have evidence showing that there's some effectiveness of it. And we add how you can do it. And we presented this to some editors that we're working with in various places. One of our pilot projects is to work locally with some newsrooms. And locally is really interesting. This is a survey that Christy Roschke, our managing director, led, working on, surveyed about 6,000 people around the country. And really interesting thing happened. If you ask, this was a word association. So we said, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear news? Well, it was fake, about 20%, a pretty awful number. But when we said, what do you associate, when you hear local news, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Fake almost disappears. Not completely, but something, a bunch of words that we collected into something called My Place, My Town. That was the first response overwhelmingly. We think that's good news. We think that's an opportunity. The worrisome part, and there will always be one, is that the people who want to discredit real journalism are now going local, and they're doing it with some success. We're working with newsrooms, 3 McClatchy newsrooms, in Macon, Georgia, Kansas City, and Fresno, and with Cronkite News, which is the news arm of Arizona Public Broadcasting, which the Cronkite School owns and operates. And we're working on experiments with partners, people like Harkin, Spaceship Media, a whole bunch of really great folks, to see things we can do to experiment and try things that are working. So in Kansas City, one of our focuses is transparency as well as engagement, and little things are being added. It took a long time for this traditional news industry to do bios on stories. Well, that's coming. We think that's a good thing. Telling them who you are helps. They're having meetings, collaborating with the local library on a couple of projects. Libraries have a tremendous amount of credibility. This is a good pairing, and finding out what the communities want. They're talking about the journalism, how they did it, why they did it, what happened when they did it. This is vital into the transparency arena. There's much more going on with them and with Fresno and Macon and Cronkite News, but a flavor of some of the experiments we're doing. We're also on a project that's just launching to talk about science and health. We think that news literacy should be not necessarily a topic of its own, but rather embedded into other things. And science and health is the first place we're working on a grant to see if we can make modules and do that so we can embed it into lots of other stuff. Another thing we are vitally interested in is this place where supply and demand meet, sharing. How do we deal with people constantly sharing stuff that's wrong? How do we help them understand how to do it better? There are some projects, one in Asia we're looking at closely called Share with Care, and we're going to see what we can come up with. This is also quite new. But we really need collaboration across all the boundaries, and I hope that some of you, actually, some of the people here are our partners. I hope that more of you will be over time. This has got to happen across all borders and ideologies and everything, or we're just not going to make it work. So I hope that you'll ping me about ideas you have. The really important thing for us is that the News Collab, it's newscollab.org, we don't copy things that people do and do it ourselves if they're good. We help them do more of it. We want to only experiment and try new things where others aren't doing it. So we want to help you do things and promote the good stuff you're already doing. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. That was great.